Hello! If you watch my last leaks video, we have more leaks, but this is from the academic side. Now, I will not reveal my sources, and I always say take this stuff with a pinch of salt at this point, because it's the nature of this kind of thing, I suppose. Rings of Power, we all know, is not accurate to source material, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, before everyone chimes in, well, they don't have the rights. They rewrote what they had the rights to anyway, so who cares? Academic side of this was quite interesting because Tom Shippey was fired, and insiders say they wanted him gone from the beginning, but then there were a lot of other Tolkien academics and scholars that were passed over because they were too concerned with accuracy. There are people that have had meetings with Amazon and meetings with different people and so on. It's interesting watching this and seeing these people finally talk. One person had a good meeting with Amazon, it was all going well and they were basically on board, but Amazon said, we don't want you, you are too concerned with accuracy. You are too concerned with this. Because we know at this point they didn't want accuracy, they wanted to create something more or less original and have a girl boss series. And that lends itself into the heavy reshoots, rewrites, and recastings that happened at the last minute. I've said this in the other video, there's hours of footage that have been left on the floor that is a completely different show at this point. I still think it would have probably been a disaster, but I don't think it would have been as bad as we got. They intentionally went for people that were not technically Tolkien academics, although they have that background. They went for people that diversity and equity. They went for people that were less than trustworthy. They also went for people that look through the lens of Tolkien through activism, and there is a massive difference between activism and fans, and the problem is a lot of these fans who are actually activists use Tolkien's work and Legendarium as a form of activism to rewrite what was said. We've already had the shills on the internet editing and photoshopping different passages together to make things make sense. And also, this is another video coming up, the fans of this show are its biggest problem. They get rid of Shippey, they get rid of anyone that was too focused on accuracy, and they pass over very well-respected people within the Tolkien community. Just kind of, they didn't want it. They didn't want that accuracy. They didn't want the storytelling. They didn't want it. They wanted a girl boss series. And I've said this before, that the accuracy of Rings of Power is pretty dire. The compressed timeline doesn't quite work. Again, that's a result of reshoots. The characters don't work. And there is a big reason why they're populating this world, the very underpopulated world, with a lot of original characters, because stuff went down, because they can't kill off any of the well-known characters, they can't kill off any of Tolkien's characters, but they're also on loan, and I talked about that in another video, from Warner Brothers, so that's the screen rights are complicated with the characters, and it's why they're not really part of the promo, why there's no merchandising, and so on. But this set of leaks has been bizarre to say the least, because these people that got passed up are super respected, super well known, people that have gone through this, and some of them were put on lists and just quietly not talked to, and others were talked to and had meetings and phone calls and Zooms and were basically told no. And that's a problem. That is a major problem. And it kind of shows that, from the very start, they didn't want anything. I mean, Lenny Henry, for example, his entire shooting block was done in 2 weeks. And other rumours persist that Lenny Henry was originally a different actor. And they just CGI'd his head onto Lenny Henry. Lenny Henry's head onto the actor as well. Amazon didn't want accuracy, they wanted to replicate the Fellowship of the Ring, and they wanted to replicate Game of Thrones, which is also very evident in some of its story beats and characterizations. For example, Galadriel in Rings of Power has more in common with Arya than actually anyone else, which I find really strange, like her character arc is lifted directly from Arya. Bizarre Frankenstein's monster of a show, where the original concept was going to have Galadriel and Sauron as background characters, and a completely different female character, and the timeline would have been so compressed. It's why the continuity is so bad. It's why there's very obvious mistakes throughout this entire show, and CGI swords that disappear and reappear between shots, and night filters that disappear and reappear, and characters in the same costumes for months at a time, if you believe the timeline of this show. And they are pushing, and the fans of this debacle are pushing to have this included as part of Legendarium. Like, the fandom wiki has fallen, which is a shame. You're not allowed to criticize this show. You're not allowed to put up a list of differences or anything, which I find fascinating. Amazon didn't want to create Lord of the Rings. They didn't want to create the Second Age on screen. They wanted to create girl boss against the world narrative. And with the original characters, it probably would have made more sense. It would have been an original female character. The list of names that have got passed over because of this show, because of how it went down, because of they're too concerned with accuracy, they're too concerned with this, they're too concerned with that. And that's, like, the whole list is massive at this point. Seeing that go down has been fascinating to watch. I mean, there are people that are, like I said, super well known, super respected, that got passed over. And I've said this before. Changes in storytelling is absolutely fine. You know, you cannot replicate a book on screen, especially when the limited rights, but there is something they could have done because they do have rights to quite a lot of the material. They didn't want that. They redid the origins of key locations. They changed the entire relationship with Numenor and Middle-earth and all of these places. There was a MAGA rally. Come on. This show is bad. And the insistence on inserting modern politics within the show not only shows a great deal of lack of creativity, lack of respect for the source material. There's this god-awful podcast where they talk about Lord of the Rings fan fiction, and they talk down to their audience, by the way. It's a really horrible tone. Sort of intellectual superiority complex. They talk down to the people listening. And listening to a bunch of grown-ups talk about fetishes is bizarre, to say the least. Like, I get it, we all have our stuff, but it's very obvious you're into this stuff. The fan base it's developed don't care about this. They're not aiming at the fans, and they thought they could just buy the fans with the name alone. But passing up these well-respected, these well-liked, these people that have had a great deal of influence within the Tolkien community, and people I've met face-to-face, and a few of them I know face-to-face, is kind of sad, because all for the sake of modernity, they hired the pink-haired SJW with absolutely no talent, and because she was paid enough, she'll say yes to anything. There is a joke there, but I'm not going to say it. I think that's ultimately the problem. And when Amazon weren't concerned with accuracy, they weren't concerned with storytelling, they weren't concerned with anything within the works, they just wanted to tell an original story and just use the Middle-earth setting as kind of a skin. I said this in the previous video, I wonder what's left on the cutting room floor and how different the show would have been, but they wanted Tom Shippey out pretty much from the start of the entire production, and they were looking for an excuse to get rid of him. And the second Christopher Tolkien died, that was kind of rewrites, stuff happened, there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes, a lot of drama, a lot of people walked, a lot of actors walked away. It shows in the production. You know, they have this beautiful world of source material, even if it's just the appendices and the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. They have that source material. You could tell this story, but obviously they didn't. So tell me what you think on the leaks. Tell me what you think of the information. If you guys like this, please keep going. You can like, subscribe, share, and support this channel. And I will talk to you guys later.